to my channel. I made this video for my grade 4 students, my grade 4 history students, of course. You are more than welcome to watch this video as well. But be mindful that this video is designed for their level. Today we're going to talk about the split of the Roman Empire. Now last time we talked about Nero and how Nero persecuted the Christians, and how the dynasty, how this Julian dynasty ends with him. Okay, now after the death of Nero, in the year of 69, 69, not 79. Rome had this crisis. We call it as a leadership crisis because there's no clear definition. There's no clear consensus who's going to become the emperor, the next emperor to replace Nero. So it was the historian. They're very good in giving names of an event. They name it as the year of the four emperors. Now, what does that mean? I mean, in 1 year they have four different people, four different persons who claim that they should become the emperor. Of course, civil war happens. Now, civil war now can never be good. Okay, of course, because of that civil war, then people, the one who suffer, like the innocent people who suffers, there's no stability. And a Roman general, a popular Roman general by the name of Vespasius, and his two sons, which is Titus and also Domitian. Vespasius, he he came and then he restored the orderliness. He restored the orderliness, and then he proclaimed himself as the emperor. And to cut the story short, after Vespasius became the emperor, he was being replaced by his son, which is Titus. Now, Titus is the one who, if you guys remember my lessons about Nero, he was the one who destroyed the city of Jerusalem and also destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. Now, Titus was known for his arch, okay, the ark Titus, which is celebrating the victory over Jerusalem. After his death, Titus was being replaced by his brother by the name of Domitian. Now, Domitian, he was known for very particularly very cruel towards the Christians. Okay, it was during this time of Domitian. It was during the reign of Domitian. The book of Revelation by John was being written. Yeah, that end part of the Bible was being written. John, Apostle John, apparently he was the last apostles remain out of the 12, the apostle of Jesus. He was being exiled in the island of Patmos, and then he wrote the book of Revelation during his time. Now, fast forward the story a little bit. After Domitian's Roman had a period of time, we call it as the five good emperors, because after these five good emperors, they have horrible emperors. Now, these five good emperors, I'm gonna go briefly who are they. Okay, first one is someone by the name of Nerva. Okay, Nerva, he was known for the emperor that really cared for the poor. He he support the orphanage. Cool, huh? He supported the orphanage, and then he managed the empire meticulously in details, that somehow so the government runs smoothly. So that was Nerva. And the second one is Trajan. Okay, Trajan, the Emperor Trajan. He was famous for under his reign, Trajan, he expanded the Roman Empire territory to its largest extent, all the way to the Sassanid. Well, not to Sassanid, in the border with the Sassanid Empire in Syria, in Britannia, in Germania, or German, Germania. Okay, and also the North Africa, Spain. And after that, the third five good emperor is someone by the name of Hadrian. Hadrian, he was famous for two things. Okay, he built what we call the Hadrian Wall. Okay, if the China have a great China Wall, now Roman have this somehow great Roman Wall built by Hadrian. It was being built in Britannia, in modern countries of England right now. It's separating between the northern part of England and the southern part of England. The southern is occupied by the Romans, which is they call themselves as a civilized. And meanwhile, the northern, according to the Romans, considered to be savage. The Caledonian people, or the Celts. So they built this wall just to prevent this savage Caledonians, invading their land, their colonies there in Britannia. That's Hadrian. Oh, another thing about Hadrian. He spent most of his time kind of like, I think half of his time as an emperor, moving around from one province to another province. Okay, to kind of like doing, try to kind of like, to improving the territory, to improving the province, the frontiers. That was Hadrian. I think we have in Indonesia we have a term for that one. Okay, it's being popularized by our presidents. Like we call it blusukan, right? Blusukan. Now, the fourth one is Antonius Pius. At his time, okay, Antonius Pius, Roman reached its height of power and also wealth. It was during his time Rome become like very wealthy. Okay, very very wealthy compared to the predecessors. Very wealthy, and it's become like very powerful. But then again, at what cost? At the cost that somehow the poor become poor, the wealthier become wealthier, the powerful become more powerful, the weaker become more weaker. Yeah, there's this kind of like tension now here in between the poor and the rich. It's become ever present. Now, last but not least, the last 5 good emperors, someone by the name of Marcus Aurelius. Now, Marcus Aurelius, he's interesting kind of like guy. He's basically he's a nerd. He loved to read books, and he most of his time, he spent his time in the frontiers. Most of his time, he spent his time in a battlefield. Okay, try to securing like the borders of the Roman Empire, and then try to fighting off this against the savage according to the Romans, of course, in a battlefield. And whenever he go to the battlefield, he will brought with him his library. So can you imagine this kind of like warrior emperor, this warrior emperor. He spent his free times as reading books, to read books, and he was known also like as the wisest emperor, the wisest Roman emperor ever lived. He was also known as a very stoic person. I mean, what I'm trying to say, he popularized the stoicism, or it's a kind of like a movement. It's a kind of like a belief that somehow stoic is like, when you describe someone as being stoic, that means someone is very calm, someone that is very kind of like not expressive enough. Okay, and then he was very calm, and he was like very self-controlled, and he kind of like he accepting like not kind of like calm as in like kind of like to show that being weak, but then again to show that somehow he have a kind of like ability to control himself. That's what we call like being stoic. Yeah. Now, that is Marcus Aurelius. But after the end of the reign of Marcus Aurelius, that's it. Okay, Roman never had this kind of like good emperors like them, because after that everything just go down. Okay, now the historians name it as the crisis. Oh, sorry, the third century crisis. The third century crisis, because why? The third century crisis is a compilation of a disaster. They have a disasters of the leadership. They will have a lot of like incompetent or unwise unwise emperors. One emperors against another emperors, and they were like one emperor were being killed by another emperors, and like so on. Okay, they will have a civil war. Okay, unwise emperors, and they had a plague. Okay, they had like probably like a smallpox plague, which just kills a lot of people. And then not just that one, they also it disrupt the economy. And then during the third century crisis, they also have a famine. And then they also have a problem with the Sassanid Empire, the Sassanid Persian Empire. As the Sassanid Persian Empire, they're kind of like claiming the eastern side of the Roman Empire. So it's a compilation of troubles. Yeah, that's what we call the third crisis, the third century crisis. Now, during this kind of like third century crisis, also the Christian suffers. Many Christians, they died as a martyr, or someone who died because of their faith. Okay, many of church were being persecuted, and many they were like abandoning their faith. Okay, so it was a horrible time. The third century crisis. Probably, if you remember your grade 3 lessons, this is probably close to the what we call the intermediate period. Okay, So now in the year of 284, there was this general, there was this like Roman general. He was very popular among his soldiers apparently. Someone by the name of Diocletian. Diocletian. Okay. Now Diocletian, he was being pushed by his troops. He was being pushed by his followers, troops, to become the emperor. To become the emperor. Now he reluctantly agreed, and then finally, yeah, he agreed about it. And Diocletian, he make this kind of like oh, by the way, Diocletian, actually he's not from Italy. He's not Roman. Well, yeah, he's a Roman citizen, but then again, originally he came from, I think if I'm not wrong, he came from Romania. Please correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Okay. Anyway, he came from Romania, and some says that he does not even speak fluent Latin. Okay, he doesn't speak fluently Latin. Anyway, he was very popular. Oh, by the way, it was a common thing that in the Roman military, that the Roman military kind of like troops, they came from different background. They were not from Italy, but they came from different tribes. They came from different nations occupied by the Romans. Now, Diocletian, he had this kind of, as an emperor, he launched some kind of a reformation movement to solve the problem, solve the third crisis problem, the third century crisis problem. Now, these are some of the Diocletian reformation. Number one, okay, he, to prevent the military rebelling against against him, which is that happens before that. Okay, the military were not happy with the emperor. They killed the emperor, something like that. So Diocletian, pay attention, he added the numbers of the generals, but he reduced the numbers of the troops the generals can have. So it's a very smart move. So what does that mean? If there's a general who does not like him and plan to rebel against him, yeah, go ahead. Because why? If that happens, if there's a rebellion happens, that general will not going to have enough troops to overtake the whole authority. Smart and sneaky. And not just that one, he kind of like what? He split the provinces, he split the Roman provinces into kind of like, a smaller provinces, which is, it's for, so much easier for him to organize, and at the same time, it discouraged this province to rebel against him. Because it happens a lot during the third century crisis. And not just that one, I think I mentioned about the starvation. Now, the starvation happens because of this kind of like complex mechanism as an inflation. I'm not going to explain like about inflation, but think it this way, okay? Basically, inflation in a nutshell, I finally explain it just a little bit, is that yes, you have the money, yes, you have the resources, but then again, they are not. You have the money, but then again, there are not many kind of like goods that need to be bought. I mean, you have money, but then again, they have a small amount of like food that to be sold. So what will happen? We call it as the supply demand, because the supply of the goods is only limited. But then again, you have a lot of people have a lot of money. So what will happen? The price of these goods or bread or basically food or daily necessity will become higher, and the value of your money will become lower. So what will happen? Then you end up cannot buy anything. Yeah, the price. So that's what happens. Now, as Diocletian, to solve the problem with that kind of like things, okay, Diocletian make a set list of prices, the basic necessity kind of like prices, and then he said it fixed. It cannot be changed. Like for example, the bread have to be fixed in wherever part of the part of the Roman Empire, the price must be the same. But actually, it didn't work. Yeah, he had a good intention, but yeah, thank you for trying. It failed. It will not gonna work. Okay, because if all the price of the bread is just the same, then eventually nobody wanna sell bread, because of course, in order for you to sell bread, you need to get profit. Yeah, it's kind of complicated. Anyway, didn't happen. Next, another kind of like reformation that he built, that he assigned everyone to go back to their land, to go back to their original native land, and force them to stay there, and they cannot go anywhere. Stay there. Why he did this? Because of course it's easier for him to tax, okay, to tax them. And then it's also again is to discourage them, people to move around, and then people will try to he tried to isolate the people, so it will discourage people to rebel against him. Yeah, very sneaky and smart, General Diocletian or Emperor Diocletian. So what's next? Of all this, the reformation that he built, one of the most controversial reformation or change that he made is by splitting the Roman Empire in half. Yeah, he split the Roman Empire in half between west and the east. Okay, And not just that one. I forgot to mention it, but by this moment, it was being popularized by someone by the name of Vespasian. Sorry, not Vespasius. Domitian. I think Domitian. No, no, no. Nerva or Domitian. Anyway, by this moment, the Roman Empire. I mean, the Roman Emperor. They will have this kind of like system of like the system that somehow to decide who is going to become the next emperor after him. We call it as the Augustus and Caesar. Don't get mistaken, Augustus and Caesar. Now let me explain about this kind of like method about this Augustus and Caesar soon. The Augustus, we can call it as the senior emperor. Okay, the Caesar, we can call it as the junior emperor. Now what does that mean? In one period of time over time, okay, you will have like the senior emperor and you will have the junior emperor. The senior, we call it as the Augustus. It's a title, by the way, Augustus, and the junior emperor, we call it as the as the junior. Caesar. Yeah, Caesar, Augustus, and Caesar. Caesar junior, Augustus senior. Now, did I mention about the splitting the Roman Empire? Now, Diocletian, he chose one of his assistant, one of his loyal assistant by the name of Maximian to become his junior emperor as his Julius. So that means Diocletian will become the Augustus. He become the Augustus, the senior emperor, and meanwhile Maximian become like the junior emperor or the Caesar. Diocletian, he took the east of the Roman Empire, the eastern part of the Roman Empire, and then meanwhile the western was being in charge. He charged it. He kind of like he surrendered. I mean not surrender. He offered this. He gave this responsibility to taking care of the western part of the emperor to his junior emperor or Julius. I mean sorry, Caesar by the name of Maximian. Yeah. Now not just that one. Not just that one. His reformation did not stop there. Okay, not splitting the Roman Empire. He then later on pick another 2%, another junior. Okay. The assistant, okay, the assistant, or maybe you can call it like the emperor in training. One will be helping him as the Augustus, and the other one will be helping Maximian, okay, as the Caesar. Are you guys confused? Okay, I'm gonna make you guys a diagram. So basically, if you make a diagram like this, yeah, so look at that. If this is Diocletian as the Augustus, this is Maximian as the Caesar. And then like both of them, they were being helped by another 2%, okay? But so this is like the assistant of the Augustus. This is the assistant of the Caesar. The goal is one day, when they were old enough, Augustus and the Caesar, they will resign. They will resign and they will be replaced by their assistant. Oh, sorry, not by assistant, by their junior, not by the junior, by their assistant. You can call it assistant. So and the assistant will become replacing them someday. Yeah, this kind of like unique system. This kind of like new unique kind of like reformation. We call it as a tetrachy, or we call it as the rule of war. I think the rule of war. That is the translation. Okay. So now there you go. So Diocletian, he kind of like what? One more thing about Diocletian. Now, what about his attitude toward the Christian? Now, at this moment, the church were being persecuted even further. Now, if during the time of like Domitian and during the time of like Nero, the Christian were being kind of like persecuted locally. Now, during the Diocletian time, the Christians were being persecuted like globally. When I'm talking about globally, that means he make a system. He make kind of like he make the rules and the laws so much difficult for you to be Christians. Yeah. So the Christian have to hide. The Christian have to hide their identity. The Christian have to kind of like were being discouraged to become a Christian. They were being hunted down. They have to hide under the catacombs. This kind of like the underground network that they have to live kind of like somehow in the underground sewer network, hiding. And when they got caught, of course they were being kind of like what they were being forced to abandon their faith, or else they will be hurt. They will be tortured. They will be tortured. And at this moment, it was a terrible moment for the Christian, and many of the Christian they're abandoning their faith, out of fear, out of like torture, out of like kind of like somehow, yeah, it's just like horrible time for the Christians. Many Christians kind of like abandoning their faith, and then they become a traitor. So now, question that remains among the Christians during those time. What happened with those Christians? What happened with the pastors who denied their faith because of their being tortured and because they're kind of like abandoning their faith because they're afraid? Will the church have to accept them back? Will the church have to forgive them and restore them to the position? If there's this kind of like pastor who denied their faith, will the church kind of like welcome them back and put that relapsed pastor back to his position as a pastor? Okay, it's a big question mark. It's a big question mark that it will be answered later on, probably maybe in 2 lectures from now. Okay, so there you go. That is the Diocletian and his famous reformation, which is like that's again, as I said earlier, splitting the Roman Empire in half. And Roman Empire will never be the same again after this decision. Okay, until next time, I'll see you guys. God bless you.